There we go. How's it going? Welcome to the show. It's muted for a second there. How's it going? It's Dfi-nancial Friday. Excited to be here. Again, my name is Alfred from DiversiFi Capital. We've got Raymond joining us. Raymond, how's it going?
It's good, good. It's really hot. Assuming other
I'm
people are feeling the same.
I am feeling it for sure. I'm definitely need to make sure the fan is on my end, but man, it's been getting hot. Hopefully, you guys are out there enjoying a little bit of the summer weather. And before you get going with your Friday, hopefully you get to join us a little bit today on our show talking a little bit about a question we get a lot from parents, like what can we do, like if we're seeing you guys as financial planners, what is it that we can do to talk to our kids a little bit more about finances. So we've got some great information for you, something that our team found from an organization that I think is doing a lot of this already. So we wanted to share something that there's a PDF that I think highlights a lot of these great points, and we're going to cite it so that you guys can go visit their site as well. But again, welcome to the show. Welcome to Dfi-nancial Friday. We're going to talk a little bit more about how the markets are doing. Of course, we've got a little bit of inflation worry, right? And we're going to be seeing how that has affected some of the markets and talking about what that really means, okay? But before we get started, I wanted, of course, reference that anything that we talk about on today's show is not meant for personalized financial advice. It's really just general financial planning education, right? We hope that you're watching these so that you're trying to learn a little bit more, about how you can talk to your kids about finances, right? But again, it's more just from a general perspective and helping you start thinking about asking the right questions. If we talk about anything investment related, we're not soliciting you to buy any specific investment products. Again, hoping that this is served as something that you use as reference material for education. Okay. And finally, from a legal and tax perspective, Raymond and I are not your legal and tax professional. Anything that comes up there, please refer back to your own tax preparer or attorney. All right. So let's get started, Raymond. Let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the markets, what some of the numbers
Yeah.
are, but highlighting, I mean, there was a Fed meeting, a Federal Reserve meeting, those that control, so for example, where some of the interest rates are, right? What we're doing, right, in the U.S. in terms of economic growth, right? So what did you see in the markets, and what did that meeting kind of result into that maybe differed a little bit from what people were expecting?
Yeah. Just to start off with the weekly performances from the indices, S&P 500 was down almost 2%. Dow Jones actually down even further at 3.44%, and Nasdaq was the least down, but still down at 0.28%. So definitely quite a change from what we've been seeing the past couple of months. But now actually Nasdaq year to date is actually beating Dow Jones
Yeah.
slightly, but seeing how that has caught up pretty quickly over the past couple of weeks. So even from what you were mentioning, Alfred, with the Fed meeting this past Wednesday, there's a lot of pressure on inflation, right? In terms of the Fed possibly needing to increase interest rates. And that's exactly what they mentioned, is that they are planning to, or suggested that there might be one or two interest rate hikes by 2023, right? So I think that's definitely news to investors that impacted the markets. Other items too is just with the economy recovering, starting to see some labor market constraints, just not enough jobs, not enough creation, hopefully that they're going to fix over the next couple of months here. But of course, as there's more and more demand and less supply, that also increases prices as well. So that is something that as the economy continues to recover, definitely need a little bit of a fix there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, I mean, it's interesting. There was an article that came out today about California unemployment. And I think it was interesting because it was saying like, oh, okay, like workers need to be actively looking for jobs to collect unemployment.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that was a requirement before. I mean, like if I
Yeah.
look at, right, like, you know, collecting unemployment and going through something like that. Hey, like, my wife went through something like that. And just if you're looking at the portals and filling out forms, what happens is it's like it asks you, are you actively looking for jobs, right? And I guess there's an issue with, right, because I mean there was a ton of argument back and forth with how much unemployment was being paid. Are people going back into the workforce, right? All of that, right? If they're not actively looking, it does create a constraint in workers too. So it's
Yep.
definitely, right, an interesting point there. But yeah, I mean, we've been, and I think as you guys are watching this show, hopefully, right, like you're seeing more and more that there is something that's a trend that Raymond and I will be talking about how something is affecting the market for a couple weeks, maybe for sometimes even 3 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden we're not talking about it anymore because the market moves on. And that's what's happening right now, right? We have a situation where people have been talking about inflation, high inflation worries, maybe that things were more aligned, that like, you know what, both the stock market, the bond markets, and what the Federal Reserve was saying was maybe finally starting to align. And then we have a situation where, right, they're saying and come out and saying that we might have, right, a potential rate hike in 2022 or 2023. I think that surprised people a little bit, spooked the market, Raymond, like you said, which is why,
Definitely.
right, we saw this adjustment in the market, right? And so I think it's something that I think we're going to watch continually here, right? Those worries there. But, I would also say this, right? If I think about, the progression of where we are in the stock market, right? Like you were reading off numbers about where we are halfway through the year, basically. And while the market has pulled back a little bit, S&P is 11% still, right? Dow is 9 almost, right? NASDAQ is almost 9. You got to remember that these are still really good numbers, right? And
Yep,
so, I
exactly.
think, relatively speaking, if you told me that like all of a sudden there was something that would say, hey, we ended the year and it was an 11% S&P year, I take that as a very, very positive year. And I think the reason for that is the strong economic growth, hopefully, that we are seeing, right? That leads to some of these worries. So, it's a hard balancing act that, right, the Federal Reserve has to go through. Is like, is it growing too fast that it'll burn out, right? They need to kind of taper it down. So those are the things that, right, they are playing with. Okay. All right. And so hopping into our financial planning topic, right? And so what we're going to do is think about a little bit on, again, discussing with your kids about, right, money at an early age. Well, like it's, I don't know that we even, right, you and I, Raymond, right, talk about
Yeah.
it that often, but you have to think like if like our, goal of financial planning and education and bringing this education to people is so that it allows them to be better decision makers in their own finances, right, allowing them to have tools at their disposal about how to think about money correctly. It better start at an early age, right? Because I think for a lot of people,
Yeah.
like even myself, it didn't, right? And um, we happen to be in this field. I think chose that career path. What people who chose other careers and didn't have conversations at an early age about money, I think that's where you have a situation where it's tough, right? And that's where I think we're gonna step back in and talk a little bit more about, right, how we talk about it with kids. Looks like maybe Raymond here ran into a little technical difficulty. I see that on his end. Let me see if I can add him back in. Um, he'll hop back in when his internet hopefully clears back up there. But again, how do we talk about it? Well, there is actually a really good visual that I wanted to show you. And this visual came from one of our team members doing a couple projects, learning about, hey, Raymond, you're back. I was just saying how we lost you on our show, right? So I haven't gone through much. I was just saying how we're jumping into and talking about the website that has great PDFs. So I'm going to add it to the stream right now. And here's what you'll see, okay? So this chart, okay, it comes from a website called moneyasyougrow.org. Okay, I'll make sure that the team links it into the show as well so that you guys can see it. But what they're talking about is at different ages, right? 3 to 5, right? 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16, 17 to 20. And this isn't necessarily like, hey, talk about these each points at each age. It might be how they anticipated it, but these are different age groups in which you should think about how, right, or start bringing these topics out to your kids. And I thought it was really interesting because we
Yeah.
did this, right, independently Like, for example, like with my 2 year old, right, 3 year old almost, right, we talk about things like, yeah, you do need money to buy things. And that was one of the first things. Like, if we go to a restaurant, right, like my wife and I will say, like, okay, what do we do? Well, we order food, they make the food. And after they make the food, you have to pay for the food. We have to wait to pay for the food with money. Like, we talk about that. Okay. Certainly, I mean, I don't know that I remember that when I was a young age, right? That my parents are talking to me, but I think it's something that builds, right? Like, it builds over time. Like if mom and dad are going to work, right? We tell them, hey, mom and dad are going to work because we're trying to earn money to do things that we like to do. Like, we'll say things like that as well, right? We were joking around, Raymond, right? On the chat, I was reading number 3 and number 4, right? Which is like, you may have to wait before you can buy something you want, and there's difference between things that you want and things you need, right? And then I
That's
paused there with
probably
it too.
that's
uh,
probably like a not even a lesson for a 3 or 4 year old. It's probably for life. Even for adults, kind of learning to wait before you can buy or getting things that you want compared to things that you need. Right, it all kind of goes back to budgeting, but
yeah.
instilling that at an early age, I think is going to be very important. So
Yeah, but it's hilarious because it applies to, right, like myself, it applies to
mhm,
everybody. We're like, man, I
exactly.
forget these 2 points, right? And so like, it's such a, big 2 points that you can think of when we go back to budgeting with clients and thinking about this. And it might be something that, what just wasn't instilled when we were younger and we're still learning it, or
Yeah,
just something that honestly I think is very tough when we are talking about a situation where we're earning more money, right? We want things in life, we want to travel, we want to do things. Like, how do you prioritize, right? And you have to
yeah,
come back down to like actually thinking, what are things that I actually just want versus what are necessities, right? And I think by starting there, it helps you break down your budget a little bit more. So I really like those 2 points that are shown there, right? And so I think that's fantastic. Now, as we head into 5, 6, and 7 and 8, I think these are good points. I don't know that we talk about them so much, right? In terms of like, I like, for example, point number 7, it can be costly and dangerous to share information online.
yeah,
Absolutely, that's, I think, something that we're all learning, whether it's phishing attacks, right, through emails and whatnot, right? Certainly, I think as maybe the generation gets younger and younger that gets access to devices, internet devices, iPads, and whatever, they certainly need to be careful. But again, that's, I think, an adult lesson that can be learned
definitely.
quite a lot, right, as well. Okay. But I did want to spend some time talking about 9 through 12, right? As I scroll up here, 13 through 16, because there's a lot of things here that, right, look good here, but maybe we differ a little bit in opinion about how we talk about it, okay? Because
Yeah,
Raymond and I, these are the age groups in which clients do ask us all of a sudden, right? Like, how do we talk to our 9, 10, 11-year-old, right, about
mhm,
allowance or working for money and all of that, okay? So, maybe you share with me, Raymond, right? If someone's asking about like, okay, I want to maybe invest for my kids, or I've heard about these certain accounts, like how can they benefit, right? And I'm talking
yeah.
about like the UTMA, UGMA accounts. Talk to us, Raymond, how you explain to clients what the benefit of these accounts may be, but also how philosophically you can use that account to teach, right, kids about money.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for a UTMA account, it stands for Uniform Transfer. Gets a minor there, but yeah, in terms of this type of UTMA accounts, they allow you to basically create accounts underneath your child's social security number, but allows you to actually how we talk to our clients, allowing the kid to really start to invest right in certain stocks, right? By the time they're 10, 11, 12, by that point they probably have some interest in certain companies, whether it's like Disney, whether it's Nike, or Apple, for example, right? All these different companies that they're probably aware of technology wise already, or they're actually using, but it gives them a sense to be able to invest and at a very early age and to understand how it is to invest within the stock market. So it is a little bit different from maybe a 529 account that a lot of people are accustomed to. But the difference here is that since it is created underneath the child's social security number, once they do turn 18 or whichever the legal age is in your states, those funds are actually theirs, right? So you technically, wherever those funds are being held, that custodian or institution will actually require you to remove yourself as a custodian on the account, and now it's underneath your child's name and social security number. So technically, they do have a lot more freedom with this aspect, meaning that they can go out and buy a car or go take a trip to Europe or whatever they wanted to do with those funds, because technically it is theirs. So, while it is a different route that parents can take, that we also advise on if clients want to have their children start to invest a little bit earlier, um, there are the other sides that you have to consider as well, as if you are to create this type of accounts.
Yeah, and I think speaking out loud, I mean, look, if you're trying to save for kids and wanting to have them get interested in money, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, how do you make sure, like, if you talk to a 10, 11-year-old, 12-year-old about the stock market, I don't know that that's going to interest them,
Right.
most kids, okay, very much.
Yeah.
But if I can give them an incentive, okay, and the incentive being, what if I tell my kids that, hey, this $500 or $1,000 that we put into the account is something that can be yours when you turn 18, whether it's for a trip for high school, whether it's to purchase a car. We can make that decision together down the line, but it can be available for you, right? Now, right, if it's something that they can see grow, we can make them excited about it, that maybe it went from 500,000 to 1,500 to 2,000 over that time, which would be great. Like, that's something that now they're just seeing the incentive. They're seeing the time value of money, right? They're seeing the power of the stock market. They might even see, right, the stock market volatility, that maybe it was $500,
Yeah.
it went down to 400, but that over time, right, it's gone now back up to 1,000, right? That if you give it enough time, maybe the fluctuations don't matter. And I can't tell you how valuable that lesson might be once the kid does go to school, right, and does go to college, then or if they choose to go to college,
Mhm.
start working and then start to save. How many clients between, or clients or friends and family, how many, Ray, keep too much cash in their checking account?
More than people expect.
More than people expect, right? And it's a
Yeah.
lot. And so, and that lesson comes from the idea that this unknown risk factor of
Mhm.
investments, which, if we tie it back to inflation, like this idea inflation, if you're just
Yeah.
keeping money in a checking and savings account, you're losing out, right, to what the future purchasing power is, robbing you of your money literally over time, right? And so
Mhm.
staying invested is one of the best things you can do, but starting at a young age and showing them and then giving them an incentive to really feel like they're tied to it, that they have a reason, a purpose to say, I do want to watch over, and have them again
Mhm.
buy things that they're familiar with, I think is a fantastic strategy. Okay. And
Yeah.
so, going back to like where this article is talking about, right? I would absolutely add that. I mean, again, this is not ours, right? This is from moneyasyogrow.org, but like thinking through like how we talk to our clients and how they should address their kids between, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, I think is a fantastic time to be able to start that account for your kids if you were helping them save anyway. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, what's another thing that we want to touch upon here, that I think is really helpful, is the credit card piece. Okay. I think credit cards, Raymond, can be
Mhm.
very divisive in terms of the way
Yeah.
that we think about it, because look, there's no getting around the fact that what in the US, right, the amount of credit card debt, right, that has been
Mhm.
accrued is massive. And that's because of a lot of bad spending habits, right? Like I
Sure.
absolutely agree that, like, and we've talked about this in our previous shows when we talk about budgeting and net zero budgeting and when to not use credit cards. Certainly, it's understanding the power of the credit card, but understanding how dangerous it can be too is key.
Yeah.
So I do like this point where it says, you know, you can, I mean, again, by the way, it says the sooner you save, the faster your money can grow from compound interest. So before I jump into credit cards, I think that, you know, I'm just taking it a step further. Like, how do you get compound interest, right? Certainly from just savings accounts may not get you that compound interest. It's hopefully that investment account that is then, right, has incentive for the kids, right, in the future, will allow them to learn that better, right? And then using a credit card like or is like taking out a loan. I think that's a great point to teach, right? I think that's a great point to teach and understand, but also know that maybe, as you borrow money, right, like we've talked about this with our lenders, as you
Yeah.
borrow money, what happens? What are they looking for, Raymond? They're not necessarily looking for like, you know every, like, no debt, right, all of that, right? They're looking
Yeah.
for the ability to for you to have paid things off over time, that you've
Yeah.
had a couple lines of credit, right? And what do we find a lot of times where people either don't have that great credit? What was it the cause, right? Like on their credit report.
I mean, probably just them not using anything that has allows them to show to the credit bureaus that they are able
Mm-hmm.
to pay things off, right? I mean,
Right.
that has happened quite a few times where, there's no debts, which is great, but at the end of the day, when you do need a car loan, when you do need a mortgage, when they go off of your credit score, there's just not much to go off of, right?
That's right.
So there are ways to really use credit cards in a safe way, right? It can
That's
be
right.
done through setting limits, right? Even starting at a younger age to build that credit, but so to still into the kid, like, hey, this is your borrowing money as a loan. It needs to be paid back. And if it's not paid back on time, there's going to be interest, right? Because you're borrowing money. So, you know, I think there are ways to be smart about using credit cards, not necessarily avoid using all of it, but understanding kind of how it works. Because even to this day, there's a lot of people that don't understand how their interest works on
Mm-hmm.
credit cards, right?
Yeah.
And it can work easily against you if you don't pay it off, because now you have late payments. Now you have things that are going to impact your score even negatively, as compared to what our goal was to increase your credit score over time. So,
Yeah. And I think this is right, like with the credit card side, like this is key, right? Like I do have people who think that the moment you use a credit card, right,
mhm,
interest is accruing, right? But again,
yep,
it says if you don't pay your bill full in every month, right? And so it's that understanding, right? Once you have a better understanding of it, hopefully, I think when I was in high school at a very early age, I got a secured credit
mhm,
card from my parents. It helped me
yep,
out a lot because the moment I got to college, I already, right, like even with a small job, right, I was able to get a normal credit card, and then it built from there, right, to be able to
mhm,
turn into a really good credit score, which gives you all the power in the world to hopefully then borrow, right? That doesn't become a hampering factor, right? So again, coming from like age groups, like I think it is to use this as a reference to say using a credit card is taking out a loan, but again, explaining to them a little bit more about, right, when is it
exactly.
good to use it versus when is it not good to use it.
Mhm.
Unfortunately for me, I let that credit card, the really old one, lapse. I think I talked about that a little while ago in credit scores, and all of a sudden my credit score dipped like 60 points in a month or something. I had no idea why, and it was like that card I forgot to keep it open, and then it closed, and all of a sudden it didn't count as part of my credit history anymore, right? So it's just
I mean,
something that you continually have to focus
yeah,
on.
I think even for history, for a lot of credit scores, when we check like on our credit cards, because a lot of them offer it now for you to check your credit scores, but
Yeah.
I think it requires a 15-year history to be in the excellent range,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're starting at age 30, where you're probably getting your career, you're
Oh
starting a
man.
family, wanting to buy a house, like you won't even be, maybe fair would be just like a fair above average, and then like
Right.
excellent. Like it takes 15 years to get excellent. I think I'm not even sure if I'm quite there yet either, even at my age.
I
So it
definitely
takes
was
time.
close. I definitely was close
So
with
that
that
happening.
credit card, and then that credit card went away, and now I need to put in my time again, right? And so, but no, I think, right, like talking to your kids early about, right, the power of money. So again, at a younger age, what does that money
Mhm,
do? I think that's a good summary. Like, is that money to help you buy a toy? Is that money to help you, right, pay for dinner, right? That mom and dad need to work for money, right? I think that
mhm,
is, right, something that is good, right, to learn early. And then, excuse me, as we, head further, right, it's the idea of, the like, where can the money go, right, for whether it's saving, whether it's used to pay down credit cards, right? And as you talk about saving, the more you save, the faster it grows. It's true. And then hopefully you add on that piece about what we talked about with UTMA accounts and the ability to give them an incentive to see that money grow, right?
mhm,
And then as they start to spend money, right, what are the tools available out there for money spending, right? So that's the credit card side, building your credit. And I think if we do it in a useful manner, I absolutely recommend it, because to Raymond's point, it takes a long time, right, for you to be able to build up that credit. And if you can start early, right, it's
mhm.
better. And then I think one final point here, which we all know and love, which is taxes. Yeah, I mean, have them read through a pay stub. Okay. We have our clients read through a pay stubs sometimes because it helps them understand what it's being
Yeah.
deducted, what is actually taking from there, right? Instead of looking at, right, they might get their first job, and they thought they earned, right, some amount,
Gross.
right, that amount, right, that month, and of course the paycheck comes in and like they didn't get nearly as much. I would say, and I think this is true, Raymond, like I don't think we ever, when we were younger, like actually read through a pay stub. I just like look at the check, deposited a check, and like called it a day, right? Like,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
imagine the power of actually, right, going in and taking the pay stub, reading through it, and be like, what is Social Security, or what is, right, like SDI stand for? Like actually understanding that pay stub, I think helps a lot in saying like where your money is actually going. And that's hopefully, right, with all of these steps here, right, and again referencing it one more time, moneyasyougrow.com, great PDF here, great link, great visual here to be able to think about, right, talking about finances with your kids. But it's that idea of like awareness, right? What is that dollar doing for you, right? What is a dollar, right? So it's like early on, it's like, what is a dollar? What is it doing? How do you spend it? How do you earn it? How do you grow it? Those are the steps that will make you hopefully the kids very successful by the time that they're older, right? Thinking about their own finances. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Raymond, for joining me today. It's a fun one. It's something that I'm going to take with me a lot as we were researching for the show and thinking about this, right? Because I think there's a lot of little pieces in seeing that visual that, certainly as my daughter is continuing to grow up, it's going to be things that I'm going to share with her as well.
Exactly.
Right? So hopefully you guys as parents share that with your kids. Visit moneyasyougrow.com to be able, and by the way, we have no affiliation with them. It's just we like to share very useful information, and that's one that we found, and hopefully that you guys find useful as well. All right. Well, thank you so much. We hope to see you at our next show, and something that we come live to you guys every Friday at 3 p.m. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys soon.
All right. See you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.